We, the audience, as fans of movies, are always looking for the next hotshot director. Go from Marty Scorsese to Christopher Nolan to Denis Villeneuve, the director of the amazing 2013 Prisoners, and this, the 2015 Sicario. This is Last Page. Welcome and thank you everyone for joining us on issue 14 of Last Page. I am Maverick King, joined today by RemingtonCKing and across the ether of the Ethernet, Jason Cedars. We are here to talk about the amazing 2015 Sicario. In case you are not aware, this movie is by whom I consider to be the greatest director of the modern era, Denis Villeneuve. This man has an incredible vision for the movies he has made, along with the aforementioned movies. He has made the Blade Runner 2049, which I consider to be even a better movie than the 1982 original with Harrison Ford, directed by Ridley Scott. He also has made the latest Dune movie and the Dune sequel shortly coming up. I was very happy to go back and watch this movie again. I did not know that, Jason, you have not seen Sicario up until this moment, so I'm excited to hear what you had to see, to think about it. Remington, you're also a big fan of Denis Villeneuve and Prisoners and Sicario. To set the table, one unfortunate thing is that Denis Villeneuve movies have not done the best at the box office necessarily. Dune did well, but this movie was on the lower end of production costs as well as success. $30 million box office budget, which is pretty crazy considering this movie is basically a Marvel Other Worlds spinoff. We have Thanos, the Collector, the Punisher, and
Wakabi.
That guy from Black Panther. Pretty crazy. All coming out in 2015, which was prior to Infinity War, which kind of brought all things to a head. Anyway, $30 million box office budget. It made 46 plus million domestically and 37 plus million internationally, with a total of 84 million roughly globally, which is a success, even if you include the budget for advertisements and whatnot. But this movie is one of the reasons I like it so much is because Denis Villeneuve has a style of non-judgment. He tells these stories where you are along for the ride. In this case, Emily Blunt plays the amazing protagonist, and she is the very well-intentioned, very capable at her job FBI agent who gets swept along this ride of starting off looking for these kidnapping cases along the border, and quickly gets caught up in United States government, teamed up with members of Mexico's government, trying to take down members of the cartel or a cartel in Mexico. And there is a lot of morality that gets examined and whether or not the ends justify the means. I love the way the story is told of this movie. Jason, you have fresh eyes on this movie. What was your experience watching Sicario?
I loved it. I mean, I just finished watching it right before we're doing this, and my palms are still sweaty from the intensity that I was feeling. I think there's actually little finger marks in my couch over there from being on the edge of my seat for it. Absolutely beautiful, and I did not know anything going to this movie, and I'm so happy I did, because I walked out of it with such a great experience, and not doing enough research either on the director and what else he's done, so I could even had a feel for the tone of what I was getting into, but had an absolute, I mean, I want to say great time and all these like very positive things about it, but it's also so intense and so like gut wrenching and palm sweating and stuff like that. It's like, it's hard to like say, I had a great time watching this. It was fun, because it was a lot of other emotions, but so enjoyed it though. Yeah.
Just wait until you watch Prisoners.
Oh, I haven't seen that either. Yeah, so I'm
don't look anything up about that movie. Don't look anything up about it. Just go and watch it when Cece's not around.
Yeah.
And get back to me on that one. Denny is incredible. And how I feel, this is now my second time watching the movie, how I felt, the big thing I felt what coming away from it was Denny has mastered the slow burn. It's one of those things where sometimes you watch a movie and people will talk about it and be like, it's good, it's kind of a slow burn, and they don't mean that really as a good way. They mean it as like, oh, it's kind of slow and it draws, but eventually it has a good ending. Denny just nails tension and pacing where he can have something drawn out, but it doesn't feel like you're just taking forever to get there. And it feels like everything has weight and it matters, and it's incredible. He is by far, I think, the most dynamic director right now. It's just he's got I think less than 10 movies to his name, and I think this movie is so good, start to finish. It's so grounded, as a lot of his movies are. It feels so grounded in reality, and it's so gritty, and the acting performances are stellar. Emily Blunt is as the lead. It does a fantastic job, and I really, just watching this movie, I cannot peel my eyes away from it, even if I know everything that's going to happen, just because that's just how it is shot. And it does actually feel, there's moments that this time watching it through, I actually want to see Denis Villeneuve direct a straight up horror movie, because I feel like he has the capability to do it. That's how I kind of felt coming away from this movie, where I was like, there's some elements that are so deep thriller, so deep tension, that I'm like, something really scary could happen, and it would kind of fit. So it's such a good watch. I am so happy to have always watched Denis Villeneuve movies.
It's a perfect pairing between Denis Villeneuve and Taylor Sheridan, who has become one of the biggest creative forces in all of Hollywood, which, by the way, lest I forget, like and subscribe and re-like, blah, blah, blah. Taylor Sheridan, this is the first movie that he's written. And I knew him because he had a bit part in Sons of Anarchy. He played like the sheriff, the co-sheriff or what have you. Very handsome fellow. And he goes from just being a part of that. And then he wrote, get this, 3 movies that he's written, that he wrote as his first 3 movies: Sicario, Wind River, and To Hell and High Water.
Oh my God.
That is an incredible 3 movies. So he wrote all 3 of those.
That fits.
And him and both Denny have this amazing gift for telling a story, giving atmosphere, and you are really along for the ride. And when the opening scene of you're in the car with Danny Kaluuya and Emily Blunt as FBI agents that are about to raid this cartel-held houses along the Mexican-American border, you're immediately thrown into them raiding these houses, getting shot at. They pull apart the walls of the house, and there are dead bodies. And one of the Denis Villeneuve kind of traits of there's multiple shots where Emily Blunt goes in, she gets shot at, she dodges, shoots the person that was shooting at her, and then there's a hole in the wall, and you see the body, and constantly they're cutting between the reaction of the agents that survive the shooting to the dead bodies that are in these plastic bags, and these agents start vomiting, and it keeps cutting between them vomiting, and then it goes back to it holds a shot on the dead bodies. And it just constantly is in your brain of having to process like what these agents are processing. And we get that throughout the movie of living what it must be like to be a well-intentioned person like Emily Blunt, who really wants to do well, who really wants to make a difference, with also getting the worst part of the world shoved in your face. And how do you handle that? And do you stay true to your morals, or do you make sacrifices or compromises in order to what you believe to be a moving towards the greater good?
Can I jump in just real quick? I want to say something because what you said earlier, wishing that he directed a horror movie. I wrote down here that what defines a horror movie? Like how is this not a horror movie? I mean, the thriller, the intensity, and then the graphicness of just that opening sequence. I'm like, this is just a horror movie done, through like a Call of Duty lens, or something along those lines, where it's like putting this such a real spin on what is going on, in these border wars and what these FBI, CIA, cops in general just deal with. That it is a horror story, a horror movie that their lives are. So it's interesting that you said that a little while ago. I was like, oh no, this is a horror movie in my book almost. But sorry, Remy, go ahead.
No, by all means, that's a good point because, yeah, it did remind me, you just saying that does remind me of after the bomb goes off in the initial scene, then it's like this just kind of cloud of smoke and dirt and dust. And you just briefly get one shot of a guy crawling and you can tell like the top of his head has been blown off and it's like most of his arm is gone. It's just a very brief scene, but it's just like you kind of see him coming through the clouds and you're just like, oh my God, half his head's missing. It's really brutal. But to that point, I do want to give credit not just to, so obviously just a fantastic team made this movie because between writer, director, and then the director of cinematography,
this guy,
Roger Deakins.
Yes.
Dude he's done Prisoners, Skyfall, Hail Caesar, which I didn't see, Blade Runner 2049, 1917. Those movies are shot incredibly.
Roger Deakins is
that is crazy. Yeah. Also, I did not see Unbroken, but he's basically, because there's so many good shots in this movie. Small ones, big ones, everything in between. Like the different scenes where they're shooting from inside of a car and it's focusing outside, or it's inside of the car and it's focusing on when they grab the hostage from Juarez.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And they're driving and it shows the 4 different people in the car up close and it constantly cuts back and forth from them. I don't know what it is, but I really liked how that looked. I mean, just through the whole movie, there's these different shots. When Emily Blunt gets dropped off at the airplane, the camera's in the car locked in, and then she gets out, and then it starts to pull away with the car. So you're just constantly from these like POV standpoints, and I think it works so well. And then it's mixed in with these like nice, really big open shots that you get that are really beautiful too. And
one of the first things I did after getting out of this movie, see what Oscars or any other awards that it won, and it looks like it didn't win too many, but it was nominated, for a lot. And I cannot believe that the cinematography just got nominated. I don't know who won that year, but Jesus, they must have had a much better looking movie. But
Roger Deakins literally was nominated for, I think, I'll put the number up, but I think it was like 8 different director of photography nomination awards for movies. But yeah, the guy, absolute master. And Denis Villeneuve, even in the movies he doesn't work with Roger Deakins, he incorporates that style into his movies. Just these very, as you said, wide shots and really does not try to make claustrophobic movies. He gives the audience a full view of what's happening. Always gives you a full view of what's happening. And not to skip ahead because there's so many. Just you talking about those shots of the cars. I mean, I want to get to those because there's some of the shots are just so great. But so we go from the opening scene where the FBI they raid these places, and then a bomb goes off, and then several agents it appears that they die, and then there is a meeting afterwards with unknown government agents. And this is one of the things that I love about the movie is that you don't know who these people are. There are these just guys in this meeting room as Daniel Kaluuya and Emily Blunt are just waiting outside. We don't know what's going on. You don't know who these people are. There's no like, hey, I'm Bob with the FBI. I'm Roger with the CIA. There's none of that. So you're in Emily Blunt's shoes as like, what's going on? And this does feel very real. Where the left, this is the old adage of the government or the FBI. It's like the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand. You don't know, just like Emily Blunt doesn't know, who's calling the shots, what's happening. So this group decides they want to send Emily Blunt because she's very good at her job. They don't want to send Dan Kaluuya because he's a lawyer, and they don't want to send him because they don't want someone that is familiar with the law and be like right and wrong. So they're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna send the person who's not a lawyer to be a part of this mission.
But we don't even know that aspect at that point. That's why they held him back. I don't feel like you figured that out.
They don't tell that till later. Yes, but that is the setup. Yeah. Go ahead.
You hit the nail on the head with that scene where it's putting us exactly in Emily's shoes as far as confused. I mean, we are, and Remy, you said it perfectly too. So it's like the fact that we keep getting her point of view, but it's also sometimes you feel like you're this other person in the room, with it. So it's constantly kind of shifting those two things. If like we're in the car, we're in the boardroom, or we're really seeing it from Emily Blunt's character's point of view. But yeah, that's the whole thing, is they want us to feel exactly like she does at every single moment. Of like, we don't have any more information than she does, because so many of those movies where we do know, okay, that guy's this guy, or something like, what did we just watch? Departed, where they would go around the room and be like, okay, that's Bob from accounting, and then that's the bomb squad guy, and then say hello to the camera people and stuff, and but it was so left into the for us to guess what it is, but it was perfectly done because that added to that intensity.
I love that scene. Josh Brolin just throughout the whole movie is such a dick. He's such a dick, and his sandals. I love that's like one.
By the way, for you foot freaks out there, I did represent Josh Brolin for this one.
But then that showed his level of authority, where he was, that he can wear flip flops in a boardroom like that. You're like, ooh, this guy's big.
I know. That's just that's exactly what I love.
Really quick, Josh Brolin didn't want to do this movie. He was like, this is a goofy character that wears flip flops to like FBI, CIA meetings. What are we doing here? And Denny's like, no, like just, we're not even going to talk about your shoes or anything. Like, we're just going to go with it. He had to convince him to do it because he thought it was like making him too goofy.
Oh, that's really funny. I did not know that. But no, I think it works perfectly as just like a guy who's just like clearly has carte blanche to do whatever he wants to do. And or as the Weeknd would say, carte blanche.
I would like to think that because of in The Idol, he's playing a character who's a fraud, and therefore he said that because he's a fraud. It's not because The Weeknd is stupid. I love you, Weeknd.
Anyway, so Josh Brolin clearly has just had free reign as like for a while. So we don't know. Do they ever even clarify? Is he CIA? That's the vibe, right?
No, like
she asks him, so he's like, "What are you, CIA?"
She at one
he's
point
like,
she calls
"I'm a
him
DOD
out.
advisor.
You're a spook. You're a spook." That's CIA.
So you immediately get the idea that this guy is in on the in at the higher levels, and the way that he's being so tongue in cheek with her, just like, and he's looking at her and he's smiling, chewing his gum, and just like, "You married?
Have kids?"
Yeah, it's kids, and he's just looking at her, just like meat, just the perfect like body that he needs to get what he wants. So, great open, great scene, and because they're sitting there basically feeling like they're about to get in trouble. Like that's why, like the first thing they say, Daniel and Emily say is like, "We did everything by the book, right?" He's like, "Yeah, everything was by the book." Like they're concerned that they're about to get called in and like bitched at, but yeah, Brolin's introduction in that is great. I think Denny just is a big Marvel fan because he has these characters in this movie. He has Dave Bautista and Josh Brolin again in Dune,
and Dave Bautista in Blade Runner 2049.
And he has Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal in.
Well, Jake Gyllenhaal, that was
later, but he has Hugh Jackman in Prisoners, so he has a consistent Marvel database in his movies.
What was that? God damn it, I missed it.
Josh Brolin, Denny.
Wait, I just had it.
Marvel actors.
No, it's Josh Brolin. There's something about Josh Brolin.
God Josh Brolin as Thanos?
No, it's
Cops, DOD, CIA.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I got it. Emily Blunt is so perfect as the kind of fish out of water, a well-intentioned person that falls into this room of dudes trying to find the litigious way out of their conundrum. And if you've ever had a job, this is where it just felt, even if you're not a CIA agent, if you're not in the FBI, this movie's very relatable, in my opinion, to anyone that's worked a regular job, because there's Emily Blunt is slowly just pulled into this conflict and is constantly having to reevaluate the morality of what's going on. And if you've ever had a job where you've worked with someone with dubious morals or dubious work-life behavior, and you're just like, is this what we should be doing? Like, is this legal? Is this right? Like, if you've ever worked with someone that's a scumbag, you get that feeling. And I feel like that is kind of what permeates through this movie. As Emily Blunt Josh Brolin hints at, oh yeah, we're going to Texas, and we're going there, and she's like, okay, and then she doesn't even know. They go on a plane, and the great shot. She's walking up the stairs. She sees Benicio del Toro, and he's in a white suit, and he's like, you just see like the back of his head, and it cuts back to her, and she's like, okay, who's that? But like, you don't know. He gets on the plane. Nobody says who he is. No one introduces them. She says, oh, I'm whatever her name is. And he's like, huh, like, have you been to Juarez before? She's like, no. She doesn't even like, I don't even say my name. Like, you're constantly confused because no one's telling her what's going on. And then they go in this caravan through the border, and you see dead bodies hanging.
Oh, Juarez. Yeah.
Mutilated bodies just hanging. And you're just like, what the fuck? They grab the dude that they're looking for. They're looking for a guy that's connected to the big cartel boss. They're trying to get the subordinate of the boss to have to eventually, they're going to make it so rough for him. They're going to get him to go back to the boss so that they can figure out where the boss is and eliminate him. And the shot, my favorite shot in this movie, is they grab the guy, they're heading back to the border, and it's like a horror movie, like Jaws or a shark movie. There's cars, there's the caravan, and then there's buildings, and on the other street, there's these gap between the buildings, and there's another like car that is following them.
It's a state police car.
It's a state police car that as soon as it comes in line with Emily Blunt's face, you see the car go, and it is like, oh, like it just builds the tension so well. It's so good. Oh, I love that. I love that shot.
Which I think the guy in that car is the soccer dad. You know, that
it's
guy.
Not. I don't think, no, because he's not brought into the conflict until later in the movie.
Okay.
It is one of the themes of the movie is both on the American and the Mexican side, there are bad actors, there are corrupt people, and those are unnamed people, but yes, corrupt cops.
I was doing a little research on that Juarez scene because that Juarez scene was just so awesome. You know, I wanted to just like, Juarez, is it really like this? So actually, the first thing that came up when I searched of this is Mayor of Juarez boycotts this movie because it was his exact things because it's a negative image of the city.
So if I look up Juarez decapitation, you're telling me nothing's going to show up?
But yeah, the war zone that is that city is absolutely insane. And how they drive through it, and just the people walking down the street thinks it's so normal that like 6 SUVs are like going 90 and through their streets. Which, man, props to the driving abilities. Yeah, like to be on someone's bumper going like that fast as like this caravan through the city, you know. So it set such a great tone of the felt like you were actually on that raid with them, like in the car, and how cool that was, and them just ripping through the city. But yeah, the missing persons on the wall everywhere they looked, you know, and then dead bodies hanging from, you know, streets and the bridges and whatnot. It was it's so intense, and just how normal it seemed to everyone there. Like, wow, this is a crazy fucking city.
It definitely just makes me appreciate living in America, the United States of America. Like, hey, I always will say we got plenty of problems, but like I can confidently say that if I'm driving down the street here, I'm not going to pass a bridge and there's going to be bodies hanging off. like the shit that happens in some of those cities down south of the border is pretty wild. And I feel like this does a pretty good job of just showcasing like what living in a place where the cartel can just roll up. Because that's the thing. Yeah, you just go to the wrong spot. If you're just a tourist and you're in the wrong spot at the wrong time, you can have a cartel roll up on you.
Oh, and Benicio even says that. He's like, they didn't maybe even do anything, those people hanging there, but but everyone who sees those bodies thinks that they did do something because that's what happened to them. You know?
Right. Yeah, no, I love that they put that there. So that scene is sick. I love, again, the cinematography of how they shoot it. I love the I would say the choreography, I guess, of how all the cars moving in unison when the SUVs roll up. Half of the federales pull up in front of them, and the other half pull up behind them, and they're in this big kind of tango. And yeah, the way they pull down, everything's so methodical. And then once they get to traffic, they get through the border, but it's just immediately dead traffic. And then they're just waiting, and you see the dudes roll up on the side that are clearly bad intentioned. There's the dude with just all the face tats down his neck. It's just like, oh, I wonder if that's a bad guy. And yeah, and then I was gonna say Emily Blunt, and it's just like her reacting, and she's just like, are we like, she can't believe that they're just gonna open fire on these cars. And the way they do it is so precise that it's just like they have their guns, they immediately they spot them, they're like, all right, car on the left, car on the right, green, red, and then they pull up on them, and then they're just waiting, and as soon as they flinch, they just like boom, 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 done. Just very just like precision. Just like execute everything with such precision. They do such a good job of portraying that as keeping the tension up, but as soon as it starts up, they just like shut it down immediately, and then they're on their way. But I love that scene. It's so good from start to finish. It's so good.
That is the scene that scene is the catalyst for Emily Blunt coming to a head, where she is done with like not being told anything that's happening. And basically that is where eventually her and Daniel Kaluuya confront Josh Brolin and Benicio, and they're like, what is going on? And so he has to give them a little more rope and let them know, well, we're chasing after this guy, and we hope that he goes back to the cartel head so that we know where he is and we can assassinate him, essentially. Go ahead, Jason.
Sorry, you just skipped over a really cool scene, though. It was the torture scene with.
That's after. Okay, that's okay.
Because when Emily Blunt asks him and she confronts him with Daniel, she's like, he just gave you that information.
Oh, like, right. Okay, so go ahead, Jason.
We already got the buses, because I think like Benicio ran off with I think Guillermo is his name, the guy who they got out of jail in there. But
yeah,
but go ahead, talk about the torture scene.
Yeah, but that's where we start to really see what Benicio is, what kind of person he is. We're getting a little bit more, this character that, we don't get all the information yet. We now, he's like super high up there and a lot of people respect him. And then just that whole torture scene, is going to play out horribly for this guy, and just how nonchalant some of the guys are acting. And then, oh, you filled his belly with water. Oof, you devil, you're like, oh shit, what is about to happen? And then when I think it's Brolin whistling.
Yeah.
And as Benicio is walking down the hall with the water jug, and that's it, and then walks into the scene and crotch right to face, walks straight up to the dude and just crotch in the face, like right there, and just talking to the guy. And it's just like, holy shit, dude, the machismo, the bravado, the energy that you're sending out to this dude is like, and then that's all we get. Yeah, exactly. That's all we get. There's some like sound effects I think that we get as the scene's ending, but that's all. But that some shitty shit happened, so it's cool, this movie. It doesn't hold your hand too much. We don't need to see a waterboarding. We don't need to see torturing. It's like we understood what was going to happen. So that's what I love about this movie too. It just gives you just enough information to kind of run with. So had to throw that scene in there because that was memorable for me.
Guillermo then looks at Josh Brolin, and Josh Brolin's just like,
Don't look
"What
at
you
me."
looking at me for? No hablo inglés, right?" It's just like,
Yeah, dude.
Josh Brolin is so comfortable in all the scenes he's in, just because he just wants to get like his ass covered with like the legality of what he's supposed to do, get the paperwork signed, and then that's what's really cool when in before that, when there's the scene where they're doing the introduction, where they're doing the PowerPoint presentation on how they're going to go across the border, and they're saying, oh yeah, these guys over here, and here are the marshals, and these guys, and everyone's like, oh, I got a shot for you later, and oh, I got a drink for you, and it's like they're all just like comfortable, like, yeah, that's what we do, we get together, we go knock on some doors, take someone across the border, no big deal. Like they're so used to it. And Emily Blunt the whole time is just wide-eyed, just being like, what the fuck is this? This is not what I signed up for.
I love when he's just like, I fucking love Texans.
Dude, there is like 4 scenes, at least 4 in that, where it's just a bro fest of these
Ooh.
guys just patting each other's on the back, and circle jerking each other, where it's just like they've all done this before, and oh no, who's the Delta Force? Oh, those are the guys we hide behind when the shooting starts, and it's just, and Emily is always at that fringe of those conversations. She never feels like she's part of the team, or these guys, or just even at the very end when they're going into the raid, they're like, keep your safeties on and your guns down. I don't want you shooting any of my buddies. They constantly do not let her and her partner in the circle, and you see it so much in those kind of those boardroom, or those even before them going into some of these scenarios of how they talk to each other, how they talk to them. So it's so probably so real. So what happens in those kind of scenes,
So the movie does, for me, take a dip in the middle. And I understand the story element that they're trying to tell. Emily Blunt's character, there's the bank scene where they are trying to bust one of the a girlfriend of one of the cartel members from withdrawing money from a bank. It is interrupted. She goes into the bank. Her face is caught on camera. She is now, that is something that can leak back to the cartel. That is then used with, and I love John Bernthal, but then John Bernthal's character is this cop from Arizona who knows Daniel Kaluuya, so it seems like he's cool. They meet at a bar, they're having a good time, and then Emily Blunt goes to bang John Bernthal, and it turns out John Bernthal is there to kill her because he's in deep. For me, this kind of is the lull of the movie, just because you're so in this other world of the cartel and over in Mexico, and it's so like it's almost like a science fiction movie where you're in a different planet and you don't know the city. It's like you're on Tatooine and Mos Eisley. You're like, what is, so foreign, and then it comes back to John Bernthal being this bad actor, not literally just a bad actor as far as a character goes, where he is trying to kill Emily Blunt. And I understand the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to tell the story of it's not just Mexico. It's not just Mexico that's got bad federales and corruption on their side. There's plenty of that on the American side, along with the morally gray characters like Josh Brolin. So I understand what they were trying to do, but for me, it just wasn't nearly as interesting or as engaging as the first or third act of the movie.
I guess I generally agree. It's the one part of the movie where there isn't a lot of tension, so it's a break, and I think that's the idea. Is to say we're not like, so that way you don't get burnt out on being kind of high strung the whole time. They kind of give you this little part in the middle where it kind of dips and it doesn't feel quite as serious. And it does, which I think, to its credit though, I like that. When her and John Bernthal are first hooking up, you don't really like her being with John Bernthal and him like introducing himself. Like, it all doesn't feel like he's very nefarious until he pulls out the band.
No, exactly.
Like, and so I think that there's a really good job where it kind of catches you off guard. Because then in my mind, when I was rewatching it, I was just like, is he bad? Like, I kind of forgot. I was like, is he bad? I was like, I feel like in my mind he's a bad guy. And then they're going to hook up, and I was like, what's happening? And then he pulled the thing. I'm like, oh, that's right. But I think, Yeah, I get the whole point of it. For me, not I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I think I like that they have this moment where they kind of pull him back to reality. And I guess another reason that I do like that part is that she's constantly talking about how she just needs to keep smoking because she's so stressed out, and then she finally is looking like she's having fun, only to then almost get killed again by this guy she's about to hook up with. So it kind of just anchors her like traumatic moments and her just stress over this whole thing. That it's like kind of the last straw that kind of pushes her over. And I think it's just one of those. I like it. I like it for the fact that it just feels like where you're just like, oh fuck, this girl just can't catch a break. So I like it for that reason.
Benicio has a line at some point. It's either before the torture scene or around there. It's like, we're just shaking the tree to create chaos, and I think that was just them showing like another, tree shaking, time where they're trying to, fuck with his money. They wanted to show like different ways that they were trying to bring out the ultimate, bad guy, the,
Jefe.
his name. Yeah. The Jefes is like Martina Diaz or something like that. The guy at the very end, the whole Manuel Diaz, yeah, like him being the big bad guy. And this was just like, we see that they were doing a raid. Now we're messing with his money. Now we're gonna mess with his drug tunnel. It was just another way of them showing the tree shaking. But Remy, you're 100% right, because I needed that middle scene right there, because this was my first time watching. I'm super intense, and I felt like I finally got to catch my breath with that middle scene right there, because it is just boom, 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 boom right off the bat. And then you're just like, okay, I gotta like decompress, take in all what I just saw and everything, kind of like formulate the characters a little bit more, and then kind of move on to the final act and whatnot. But I honestly thought you guys got me to watch this scene for old Johnny, for old for old Johnny Bernthal, because I know of the King's family love for this actor and this character and stuff like that. So there's even, you see him walk behind her for like super quick. He goes like that fast across the screen. And I had read the cast a little bit before I got, I was like, oh, there's Bernthal, as soon as he walked by, because he has this like head swagger thing. And I know he does a lot of the head thing like this in the Punisher things. They even have some memes of how many times, I don't know, it's Walking Dead that I think he does a lot of the top of the head, the rubbing and things like that. And
from the Steve McQueen school of acting, where constantly, even if you're not saying anything, you have to do something so that the audience recognizes you. So, even if you're not have any lines, just do something with your hair, just very, very, very from the Steve McQueen class.
Yeah. And he has a certain like things that he does, and I could just tell it was him. Like if there was a silhouette of him doing those things, like, oh, that's Johnny Bernthal, for real. And I had the exact opposite reaction when he's down at the other side of the bar, gives her the nod. I'm like, he's a bad guy. He's going to try to fucking kill her later. Like immediately, like, cause you get it from when she was in the bank scene and they're like, do not go in there. And then the next scene is her looking straight at the camera. And you're like, all the cartel knows who she is right now. That's why he didn't ask her to go in there. And then I know that that's going to bite her in the ass. And I was like, oh, bar scene. This is where they've already infiltrated, something. But Bernthal's awesome though in that whole scene. Even when he's getting his ass fucking beat to shit in the back of the back of the cop car, and he is just whenever a character that you really love is at their lowest, when they're just crying and spitting up blood and things like that, you're like, oh man, but he still was being old good Johnny to me. But like I said, I really needed that middle scene to the movie to kind of like catch my breath. But that whole part, I mean, it goes from just regular, kind of, okay, catching your breath, to her getting choked out on the floor. It's like, you don't know how that scene is going to end. So it's just the small little gap that we had to catch our breath is immediately the intensity is brought on you just right after that. But the choking scene, man, that was kind of hard to watch. I don't know. It's having a daughter and being married now. It's just like that aggressiveness to the women and stuff. And they were so good in the movie of showing damage on people's faces. Like a couple of the guys who were in the very first scene who got like some of the bomb shrapnel from the shed, they're now in that boardroom scene. You see them with band-aids and you see a little mark on their head. And throughout the movie, Emily keeps a lot of her wounds that she has in her face, except for being choked out. You would have bruises and and mass amounts of I don't know, blood vessels popped or something on her neck, but nothing, throughout the rest of the movie from that. I mean, you have a sore neck or a neck brace or something, I think, from the intensity of that. So I think I was just a little bit lost on the trueness of what that would do to someone afterwards. But yeah, a very mild dip, but then right back to intensity in that middle of the movie.
I would be remiss if I did not praise John Bernthal for his performance in this movie. He's brought in and absolutely kills it. One of the most underappreciated actors in the game right now. I love everything this man does, and I think just as the charming, sleazy, bad cop just kills it. And yeah, that scene when he's again just putting the audience in the moment when he's choking the living daylights out of her, and the last scene it starts to go blurry, and you think that she's about to pass out, but then it pans up and it's Benicio. Great, just little moment of just like, oh fuck, she's about to go out. Like, it really does make you feel like she's about to go out, and then it's just the very last second that it pans up to Benicio. And again, another moment where I couldn't remember what happened. I was like, is he about to blow his brains out and just splatter him all over Emily Blunt? Because I was like, she doesn't deserve that. Like, I just had to comment that.
Yeah.
It all leads to the third act, which Emily Blunt learns the reason why she's along for the ride is because for the CIA to do an operation across international borders, they need a member of a different branch of government, in this case the FBI, to be along for the ride in order for it to have a legality. So she begrudgingly is a part of this operation that goes in these underground tunnels. They find these underground tunnels that go from Mexico to the United States and vice versa. So this movie is Ghost Recon the movie. Yes, you will never get a better video game movie ever, because you're basically along for this mission where these guys that are all decked out are going in these tunnels. They just wipe out the dudes that are in these tunnels, and we get to the true star of the movie, who I have yet to gush about, which is Benicio del Toro. This movie is all built because Benicio del Toro, we learn, is a former prosecutor whose wife and daughter, they were brutally murdered by Alacron, the head of the cartel. And so Benicio del Toro is basically a vigilante of sorts, whom has gone from prosecutor to Sicario to hitman to Splinter Cell. Basically, he is a person whom different governments hire to extract his vengeance upon regions that is beneficial to them. So they track Manuel Diaz back to Alacron, and now Benicio is fully realized and is sent. And this is a good time to mention the storyline that gets dropped throughout the movie, but we don't really know where it's going until this third act, is the corrupt Policia, who is this guy who wakes up, takes a few shots with his coffee, has a kid that really wants to hang out with him. He wants to play soccer. He wants his dad to hang out with him. He's like, oh, I can't. I got to go to work. And we just kind of get these little droplets of just this guy who wakes up and he just does his job. He's a cop and has a wife, has a kid, and eventually we find out he is a corrupt cop who is helping distribute drugs for the cartel. Fast forward that to the third act, where Benicio kidnaps him and has him drive him to get to Alacron. And this whole time, you don't really know what this cop's deal is. You get the sense that, once you see all the drugs, that he's a corrupt cop. But this is another Denis Villeneuve, Taylor Sheridan keystone of how are you supposed to feel about this? This guy's clearly a corrupt cop that deals drugs, but at the same time, he has a kid that loves him, that and he has a wife, and he lives a normal life, like seemingly normal life. And it's really just heart wrenching, the fate of this character. As Benicio is, and at this point, you're like, yeah, you want to see Benicio get to the guy, but what Benicio then does to him when Manuel Diaz, you're like, how am I supposed to feel about this?
Yeah, yeah.
It is very gut wrenching in different ways. I think the moment when you realize they're like, okay, I clearly can't fully support this scene because you know what he's going to do. You're like, oh, he's going to go kill the guy. But then you think they make you feel like he's going to let Silvio go, like the corrupt cop. You feel like, oh yeah, he's just going to use him, and then but it'll be okay. He'll let him go. And then no, he uses him as a body shield, shoots through him, and shoots Manuel Diaz. And then at that point, you're just like, oh no, this is on. This is going to get like really violent. But no, it is the thermal vision, the night goggles, how they do everything in this final sequence is so dope. It looks so good. It really does feel just like a Call of Duty game in the best way. Where if they made a Call of Duty movie, it would be the worst thing ever.
It'd be a Michael Bay movie.
It would be so bad.
G.I. Joe, just nonsense.
But the way they do it in this movie is to perfection, and so yeah, building up through that final scene, and he sits down with the wife and the kids, and you're just like, again, this is my second time watching it, but it is just like, is he really gonna kill them? Like, like, how did you, Jason? How did you feel watching it when he sits down at the table? Did you just like, oh, he's gonna kill them all?
No, I know that's what you're right. You're so many parts of this movie where you really don't know what's going to happen. You know, you think you know what these characters are going to do, but then you're like, okay, is there some shred of humanity that we're going to see kind of at the end? But when you kind of leave this movie and afterwards, it's really just showing you how real everyone does act in this movie and how a lot of us or any of these people put in these positions would probably act. But yeah, did not expect that kind of ending, you know, did not the intensity and you're so right about the video game kind of aspect of it. Like I wrote down here, it's like, do you guys remember Doom with Rock, you know, and it's a very normal movie for the whole like first act. The last scene is actual Doom first person. You know, they actually go to the video game thing where it's him moving around with the gun and then pistol whipping someone and shooting, you know, as it comes out, where it makes it feel exactly like the video game. And then I was like, oh, this feels like a Call of Duty game, you know, when they're checking the night vision, you know, the drones, and just had the combination of all that. You know, they definitely wanted that crowd to enjoy this game, you know, that way. So, but yeah, that's another part of the horror aspect I felt of this movie was that tunnel scene. I mean, The Hills Have Eyes. Is that the one where it's I think it's very, very tunnely, the whole movie. It's another horror movie. Yeah, have you seen that one, The Hills Have Eyes?
I'm only familiar with that movie by name.
I am familiar with the inbreeding. And
yeah, exactly. Like cannibals are inbreeding, nuclear testing, people living in the mountains, but it is this very mines and tunnel feel. So once again, yeah, I had this very horror movie vibe throughout there. But another thing that, Mav, I was surprised you have not brought up yet is the music. Or
Jason!
This happens
into this.
The punch. Yeah. Hey, dude, we're an hour into the review, and you had all the time, you know.
Oh, I had all the time. I was waiting.
Okay, well, I won't steal your thunder, but it was more the lack thereof of music, you know, and throughout this movie, you know, and it even brought more to a head during the final scenes right there. But you're right how they explain this whole movie very much at the end. You get all the information, but it's what's the word that they use? It's called Medellin.
Medellin.
Yeah.
Great movie with the phenomenal actor Vinny Chase.
Medellin, I feel like I've in fantasy.
You haven't seen Medellin? It was
No.
a box office failure. Like, he didn't really pull off being Pablo Escobar, I'll be honest.
Oh, okay. But I think it's more of like a fantasy term too. Like I've heard it in like some Lord of the Rings things or something.
It's a city it's a city in Colombia. But Medellin like is a very famous like cartel, and Pablo Escobar location, and it has a lot of history.
But like that's like the whole crux of this whole movie is you're just trying to get back to a point of control with the whole drug things. I think he says until 20% of the population stops putting this shit up your nose, we got to fit. This is how we have to deal with it, kind of thing. So you get so much more clarity there at the end, which is great. I love that, but it almost takes away entirely from that intensity. Felt left out of it throughout the entire movie, and I'm glad they do. I'm glad that they bring it all to a head and everything at the end. But it is interesting how quickly you go from knowing nothing to now, okay, I figured it all out, in those final couple scenes. But actually, to your original question, Remy, yeah, that's sitting at the table, with him, with the family, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I had no idea how the rest of that was going to play out, and that's such a cool thing about this movie.
The peak of that scene when Benicio's asking him these questions, and he just it's just kind of like, "Sup, bro?" Like, he just is very confident in his questions, like, "Oh, this is all about your wife." And then Benicio leans in and says, like, "Don't forget about my daughter." And then it cuts to his wife, and the expression on her face where she like closes her eyes and sinks. It's so perfect because you get the sense from the expression on her face. She is a wife. She is a mother who is married to someone that she knows does terrible things, but just like Carmela from Sopranos, like kind of just blots it out, but then it is brought to her face, and she has to hear the horrible things that her husband does, and it really brings a reality that she's not ostensibly not a bad person that does terrible things. It's just like her kids are not bad people that do terrible things, but they are a part of this world that has been created by this monster.
They are a product. They're the product.
And Benicio del Toro is the antidote, who then slaughters them in front of the gangster's face, and he tells him to finish his meal and then shoots him. It takes a minute to really just let that scene just take over.
When he says it wasn't personal for me, the bad guy, and he's like, "Well, it's personal for me." It's like that's
God. But yeah, it's, and then like, yeah, the we get the next Benicio. Benicio I love Benicio del Toro. He's great in everything he's in, but this movie really, I feel like he gets a chance to give his dramatic prowess and his intensity without ever raising his voice. Doesn't yell, doesn't scream, but you just get from his eyes and his mannerisms and the way he controls his body is constantly, this dude has seen shit and gone through shit. You get this tragic figure that is portrayed in this movie, and he is absolutely incredible, especially in the following scene where he confronts Emily Blunt.
When he is just like, when he basically goes there to get the final authorization, and he puts the gun up to her face under her chin, and she's trying so hard not to sign it. She's trying so hard not to sign it, but it's just like she's going through the whole roller coaster of emotions of just like, she wants to be done with it. She hates that she's been a part of this. It goes against what she believes in. But then it's like, when confronted with a literal gun to the throat, it's like she just is like what any of us would do, which is, I'm not going to die over this. Like, that's kind of what I gather from her character at the very end, is just like, I don't want to die over this. And and then the shot when he takes the gun apart and walks out, and but the line that he gives, he says something like, "You should move," but he says, "This is the land of wolves now.
You are a sheep, and this is the land of wolves.
You are a sheep, and this is the land of wolves now." Great fucking line. Great fucking line. And then the walk out, and she grabs the gun and she's pointing it at him from the balcony, and he turns around, doesn't just keep walking, but he turns around and stares at her, just to, and that are you actually going to shoot me? And it's just because he's banking on the fact, and I think she hates herself for the fact that her morality won't let her do that. And that's like the whole point as to why they got away with doing this, is because they banked on the fact that her morality wouldn't let her do these things.
And it's preceded by him in an earlier scene when she pulls a gun and he disarms her and brings her down. And he's like, don't ever point a gun at me again.
Oh, yeah. Well, he shoots her, doesn't he? Doesn't he shoot
her in the chest?
Shoots her, in the vest.
The body armor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so at that moment, he says, don't you ever point a gun at me again. And then it's brought to this where she does point a gun at him again, and he has to like literally stare her down.
Oh, yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be her downfall, for pointing that gun at him again, because I was like, oh shit, he told you not to do that. But I have a very different feeling of Benicio going into this movie, because the last two movies I saw Benicio, I did not like him in at all, like not even a little bit. And it was the Star Wars movie. I did not like his character in Star Wars. That was not a great character. And then, I mean, the Collector, in Marvel movies, I did not. I did not appreciate those two characters that he did.
I love the Collector.
Benicio, he either goes really far into a character or, not enough. Like, I feel like this one was just not enough, and that was great, where he's not so embodied of this character, where sometimes he'll just go full into it, this huge makeup, this huge accent, this whole persona that he creates around some of the characters that he's in. I feel like don't pan out as well. But I mean, just like Usual Suspects or something like that, where yes, great, because that is just like Benicio being Benicio. But I think when he has to go be a little bit more fantastical, it doesn't pan out as well. So, but my humble opinion, but he definitely won me over as far as a fantastic actor. I mean, all the way up until the end of this. But that scene, it really like morally fucked with me, that last scene, because I was on the Benicio train all the way up until that moment. It's like, yeah, I understand you're going to do almost whatever it takes to get, this revenge, on for your family, but to kill a very good person and then paint it off as suicide just so you can just so the red tape goes away from all this, that you don't go to jail. Like, that was the only thing. It wasn't to like make anyone's lives better or to figure out something else. This was just so he didn't get in trouble for the shit that he just did. And was about to like murder an innocent woman to do that. So at that point, and it's funny because me and my wife at the very end of it, had totally different takes on Benicio, where I wanted Emily to shoot Benicio right in the back as he was walking away. And I didn't think that I was going to feel like that until that moment, and it was so interesting how me and her both saw that final scene and then walked away with two completely different opinions of Benicio. But I mean, that's just goes to the greatness of this, movie and the writing and the directing and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's I mean, he just absolutely used the shit out of this person and was just willing to like blow her head off if she didn't help him get out of this shit. So, but yeah, that was pretty intense, where, that's how it ended. But even the next scene too kind of brings it more to even ahead of what's this whole movie almost didn't feel like it did anything. It's like we were almost exactly where we started when the movie ends, because it's the mom taking her kid to that soccer practice, or the soccer game, and her really not showing any emotion of a lost husband, not wearing black or, crying or being sad at all. They're just going to this game, them hearing gunshots, pausing the game for a second, and then going right back to it. It's like, whereas you just feel like Juarez is still this, this war zone that it was in the beginning. Now, I know bringing down one cartel dude isn't going to change everything overnight, but it just really like hits to home, like of the reality of the situation that the world, Mexico, America, and all is all in, and the drug wars and things like that. It's intense, and it's like one step forward, two steps back, or yeah. But yeah, solid movie, guys.
Yes. To what Jason brought up earlier, the music of this movie, the soundtrack of this movie. There are multiple things I have to say about this. One is it's fantastic. It is what Denis Villeneuve described as Jaws type of music. This big, low bass, like hum that takes over these wide shots, and you just get this impending sense of doom that there is no relief from, and that constantly it permeates. It takes over parts of the movie And like you also said, Jason, the lack of music that is used, especially in that final scene, Benicio confronting the mobster and his family, the choices of when to use the music and not when to not is phenomenal. And one thing I have to say, so the composer for this movie, Johan Johansson,
Classic composer name.
classic composer name, fantastic. Really tragic tale. This fellow overdosed in 2018, 3 years after the movie was released. Really phenomenal soundtrack, very talented guy, really interesting. Listening to interviews of him and Denis Villeneuve talking about the idea of trying to create this world, the world building that went into the music, which I think is very, very key to kind of constructing the tone of the movie. And this, unfortunately, he passed away, and but his music in this movie is phenomenal. It never oversteps its reach. It never needs to try to be this bombastic, over the top, crazy action movie. It's just very grounded, and I really appreciate that.
I just wanted to say, final thought was, if in compiling a greatest Canadians of all time list, Denny is at the top. Denis Villeneuve,
George St. Pierre,
GSP. Anybody else?
Somewhere there's that. Who's that hockey guy? What's that guy's name?
Shit.
He played for the Kings.
Oh my god.
People call him the man, the greatest. What do they call him?
Wayne Gretzky.
Wayne Gretzky. That's the guy. That guy. He wouldn't even make the 100 greatest American athletes. Whatever. I just threw that in there for you Canadians.
A.
Like Wayne Gretzky, eh? Anyway.
One other final thought I have on this movie is the yellow filter. Why does every Mexico shot have to be yellowish? You know, it's like, what's a show that's famous for? Breaking Bad, or I want to say it was Heat. There's another movie back in the day where it was like any time that any filmmaker is shooting Mexico, it has a yellow tint to the whole movie. And I was just like, really, this movie had to go that route, to that easy way of just shooting Mexico. You know what I mean? Where it has that sort of feel to it, you know, and this movie was just yellow, where I feel like when it wasn't just so dark you couldn't see anyone on the screen, which I really liked, you know, a lot of those scenes, it was like yellow. So it was really weird to have the two, juxtaposition of the coloring in this movie.
Ratings and final thoughts. Rembo.
8.5 out of 10. Better than an 8. Not quite a 9, but really good. Yeah. Because if I would give Prisoners a 10.
Whoa.
Actually, no, I'll give Prisoners a 9.5. Preemptive scoring there if we ever review it. But this movie is so good. I think it barely misses on maybe a few things, but I think overall it's so good. I think I can give this movie to anybody, and anybody would be able to appreciate it as if they have the stomach for some intensity. But so solid, such a good watch. Nice solid 2 hours right there, 2 hour 3 minute or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Not too long. Great film.
I tend to rank things on rewatchability, like and recommendations. Like, would I tell someone to watch this? I mean, absolutely. Do I want to actually watch it again? I mean, it'll probably be a while before I do, and if I do, you know, how much of it is lost, you know, of that initial watch. You know, it's like I like how you guys were so excited for me to see this, because it was a very good, you know, first watch sort of movie. You don't know what's going to happen, very intense. So, I mean, the fact that you guys have both seen it multiple times and still have these feelings says a lot for it. But I get very emotionally invested in a movie, you know, immediately, like while I'm there. So am I going to lose a little bit of that emotional investment? I'm not sure, but I mean, perfect though, as far as the first watching. So yeah, 9.5, maybe even 10 out of 10.
Damn.
Yeah.
He's abandoned his thumbs rating.
Yeah, I know. It was too arbitrary, and I only have 3 ratings on that. You know, I can't go. I need.
You did use a double thumbs up.
Oh, you're right. I think I might have done like a sideways between half and up or something like that one time. But
X2 rating. Yeah,
you're right. I should go back to it. So it is like this amount of thumbs up, but then a little bit right off to the side.
I think you nailed it. 8.5 is like perfect, but I'm on the IMDb solid scale, so I'd go 8 out of 10. The middle does dip a bit, and it kind of keeps the movie, which I understand it does alleviate a bit, but it kind of prevents it from being this full experience of perfection. But I do just think the movie's incredible. I do think I've seen this Denis Villeneuve movie the most out of all of his movies, and he is my favorite modern director. So everyone should watch every one of his movies. The one like he does a low budget movie with Jake Gyllenhaal called Enemy, which is kind of a weird abstract movie. I need to rewatch that one. But all the other movies are just, I heavily recommend. Blade Runner 2049, Dune, Prisoners, Rival. They're just these intense, just really well thought out. They're not at all these like corporatized, idealistic, like I'm just trying to make a buck movies. They are these stories that he's very passionate about. He's very diligent with the actors he works with. He is everything that I want out of a filmmaker. I've seen him in so many interviews. He is not pretentious at all. And I think that really comes across in the movies he makes, where he's not trying to show you how smart he is, or he's not trying to be like, oh, look, I'm such a genius, and oh, look how beautiful. His number one goal is storytelling. And I feel like every movie he does, the cinematography and the acting performances he gets, it really comes across. And this movie is built on Benicio del Toro and Emily Blunt's amazingness, and Josh Brolin and his smugness. And I just love this movie a lot, and I love all of his movies. And there are not enough Denis Villeneuves in the world to go around, so I really appreciate him. But this 2015 movie, Sicario, to me, it is a perfect showcase of his talents, and it is a movie that I would recommend to anyone that loves the art of story. And that's Last Page.